Gentlemen, this is Eastwood for Life fan, and this video is a video of my February pickups. Now, in the month of February, I picked quite a few bits up, only one DVD, and the rest of them were Blu-rays. And I picked up a few spaghetti westerns, a couple of American westerns, some Eastwood movies, a Christmas movie which is a personal favourite of mine, a mid-80s TV series that I used to like back in the day, some steelbooks, and I picked up a couple of new Charles Bronson European editions that have just been released. So the first one is the only DVD that I picked up that I'm going to show, and it's a bootleg. It's a spaghetti western. It goes by the name of Death on a High Mountain, and this stars a German actor, goes by the name of Peter Lee Lawrence, who was actually had a small part in For a Few Dollars More, and he went on to do quite a few spaghetti westerns, and I got quite a few of his. And he was a German actor who died at a very young age. Actually, he died at the age of 30 when he passed away. But I got quite a few of his spaghetti westerns, and this one I bought on eBay for a cheap buy. And this spaghetti western had never been released with an English audio, so I picked this one up from a reliable seller on eBay UK. He goes by the name of Best of the Best 2011, and I only really buy bootlegs on movies that have never been officially released. So this one will go into my rather average, well, larger than average spaghetti western collection. So that's Death on a High Mountain. And on to some Blu-rays, and this is a more classical American western, and I think many people have seen this one. I've been picking up quite a few of the John Wayne westerns, and this one's Rio Bravo, starring John Wayne and Dean Martin, and this is directed by Howard Hawks, who went on to make 5 other movies with John Wayne, and this one's probably the more famous out of the 5 movies that they made. The other ones that he did were Red River and El Dorado. I have seen this back in my teens, and I'm looking forward to revisiting this movie, as it's been a while since I've seen this movie. But this is Rio Bravo. Looking forward to seeing this classic 1950s American western. And on to a more modern day western. Well, in the 1980s this one came out, Silverado, and this kind of got released in the mid-80s when the western genre was kind of dying on its own feet, really, and they started bringing out a few westerns in the 80s. Pale Rider came out and Silverado, but this wasn't a bad movie, and this was packed with stars. You know, there was Kevin Kline, Scott Glenn, Rosanna Arquette was in this movie, and a young Kevin Costner, Brian Dennehy, Danny Glover, and Jeff Goldblum. I picked this one up, and this was a cheap buy. So this goes into my American Western collection. I've been picking the odd few American Westerns up, as I normally prefer the more grittier spaghetti westerns more so, but that's not to say that I don't like the American westerns. I just prefer them just a little bit more harder edged. So even though this is a PG, it's still a fine, good western. So that's Silverado. And then on to some Clint Eastwood movies that I've picked up. And this one, although Clint Eastwood is not in this movie, this was his third movie that he directed. And as well as being a massive Clint Eastwood fan in his acting roles, I do like his work behind the camera. And this was the third movie he directed. And I think he directed this in 1973 and stars William Holden, who was in The Wild Bunch. I've never seen this movie before, but I do know it's more of a love story, a romantic movie, and I'm not really a fan in those types of movies, but got this for quite cheap, so I'll give this one a go. So this is Breezy. And on to a Clint Eastwood movie that he was actually in, starring role. This was The Gauntlet, and I had to pick this one up because I did have a version of this, and the version I had was a French version. And although that one had the better cover, I do prefer my releases to have the English text. But this is a very, very good Clint Eastwood movie in the late 70s, and he played the struggling cop Ben Shockley, who kind of came good towards the end. And a great scene towards the end of the movie in the bus, and I had to pick this one up to kind of going through my Clint Eastwood collection and picking up a few titles that had been missing, and this one had been missing, so glad I picked this one up for a good price. So that's The Gauntlet. And Eastwood directed this movie, and I think this is one of his better movies he directed towards the late 70s. And on to another movie that Clint Eastwood directed, and that's The Changeling, with Angelina Jolie and the ever reliable John Malkovich. And this is a fine movie. And to be honest, when I did watch this the first time round, I wasn't really expecting a lot, as I'm not the biggest fan of Angelina Jolie, but her acting in this movie was superb, as she plays the single mother who loses her son. And it's a very good movie, and I'm looking forward to revisiting this movie again. And I'll probably give it a lot more credit watching it the second time round. So that's The Changeling. Fine movie. And again, Clint Eastwood directed this movie. A Christmas movie, which is a bit of a personal favourite of mine. I'm not really a fan of sort of Christmas movies, but this one is a very fun Christmas movie, and I do like Arnold Schwarzenegger, one of my favourite actors. But this has got some great moments, and I did try to pick this up before Christmas, and it was a little bit more expensive than I was trying to pick this up. As you can imagine, sort of Christmas time, people would have been buying this movie. But I waited a little bit after Christmas, went into my local CX store and picked this up for a good cheap price. And I think a lot of adults have been in this sort of position where they have to buy a popular Christmas toy at the last minute, and very funny that Schwarzenegger tries to buy Turbo Man. Very, very fun movie. And on to a TV series, which is a retro TV series back in the 80s, which I used to enjoy. And it's The Equalizer. And this came out in the mid-80s, starring Edward Woodward, who plays the retired intelligence agent who kind of becomes a private detective. And this ran for 4 seasons, and I was a fan of this series, and I think they sort of cut it pretty short. I think in the middle of towards the end of the 4th season or so, because I mean I thought it was a great TV series, but they decided to cut it. And a lot of TV stars and film stars went on to do sort of a couple of roles in this movie, but I did like the idea of this, as he used to place an advert, and I think the advert used to be in a newspaper or in a telephone box, and it used to say, "Got a problem? Odds against you, call the Equalizer." And great TV series. And I picked this up for a good price, and eventually I will want to pick up the other seasons. And I did pick up number 2 as well. And I do know they have since made a movie version of this with Denzel Washington, and I've yet to see that, but I don't know if it's got any sort of resemblance to the TV series, but I wouldn't mind asking you YouTubers, what did you guys think of the Denzel Washington movie, and how does it rate against the TV series? So please comment on that, or sub, or make a comment. So this is my first lot that I picked up in the month of February. So I'll do like a little recap. That's The Equalizer. Great TV series. Season 1 and 2 that I picked up for a good price. A Christmas personal favourite of mine, Jingle All the Way. A True Story with Eastwood directing, The Changeling. Eastwood in The Gauntlet. Another Eastwood movie that he directed, Breezy. And Silverado, an American Western, mid-80s, packed with stars. And 50s American Western classic, Rio Bravo. And a bootleg spaghetti Western, Death on a High Mountain. So that's the first lot of movies that I picked up, as I will do another second part as I put these away. So do put a comment on what people think of The Equalizer, the movie, and how does it compare with the TV series. You in the second part of this video. Part 2, and onto some steelbooks that I picked up, some classic movie steelbooks. And the first one is the cop thriller, The French Connection. And Gene Hackman stars as the tough New York cop, Popeye Doyle. And I've been meaning to pick this one up for a while, as this is one of my favourite Gene Hackman movies. And classic movie, and this boosts one of the best car chases in movies, and this movie still holds up quite well today. And also Roy Scheider is in this movie as well. Great movie, The French Connection, and this was the Xavi Steelbook release. And also another steelbook that I picked up of a classic movie, and that's Martin Scorsese's Casino. And there are a few versions of this on steelbook, but I did like this version. And starring Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro and Sharon Stone. Great gangster movie. And at the time when I watched this, I wasn't a real lover of Sharon Stone in her acting roles, but in this movie she really did prove me wrong, and she kind of stole the show in this movie. So that's Casino, and actually I've not seen this movie since I'd seen this in the cinema days. So that's Casino. Another steelbook that I picked up, which I'm trying to get the series of, and that's The Expendables. And I do have the first one that I picked up, and it just leaves me to pick up the third one. And the gang reunite again, and Van Damme and Chuck Norris comes into this movie. And probably out of the three, I did prefer the first one, but action wise I actually prefer the action in the second movie out of the three. So that's The Expendables. Good action, fun movie. And the last steelbook that I picked up was the Xavi exclusive of Heat, and classic Michael Mann movie with Pacino, De Niro and Val Kilmer, and also Jon Voight as a starring role in this movie. And I think they made about 2,000 copies of this movie, and it all got sold out, so I was happy and lucky that I actually picked a copy of this movie. And it does say it's the definitive edition, as there's been a few releases of this movie in the UK and rather disappointing editions, so I'm hoping transfer wise this is a far better version this time around. It's got a great scene with Pacino and De Niro. I did like the way that they sort of were holding until that moment came, until they met. Classic scene. So that's Heat. Very glad I picked this one up. And then I picked up some French digibooks, and I want to send a big shout out to one of the YouTube's best collectors out there, and one of my favourite YouTube collectors that I watch and sub to, and that's a guy by the name of Cinemaniac77, and most people would know him as Donnie from the Netherlands. And Donnie's got a great channel, and he's one of the top collectors out there. Some of the editions that he picks up and the videos of his collection, I mean, he's got like a museum of collecting. And I was watching one of his older videos, and I saw a Sergio Leone collection where he was showcasing these French digibooks of the Dollars trilogy. So as soon as I saw that, I had to pick these up. And although these are in French text. They do have an English audio, and they contain a digibook, Blu-ray and DVD. And this is a fistful of dollars, and I picked this up for around about 15 to 20 euros, and I thought I've got to pick that up because I'm a massive fan of the Dollars trilogy. And in the UK they've only released like the normal Amaray sort of versions, which are quite disappointing really, because these movies deserve a special edition. And also I did pick up the second one for a few dollars more, the second one in the Dollars trilogy, and actually I picked this one up even cheaper. This was actually 15 euros, where the first one, Fistful of Dollars, was 20 euros, and this was sealed. And the second one with Lee Van Cleef, and these are great editions. And I have ordered the last one, which is The Good, Bad and the Ugly, but that one was more expensive, and that was retailing at a price of 25 euros. But I want to say a big thank you for Donnie, Cinemaniac 77, for showcasing these Dollars trilogy digibooks, because if I hadn't seen that video I wouldn't have known about these editions. So all you guys, do check Donnie's channel, Cinemaniac 77, top guy and top collector. And the last two that I picked up are two Charles Bronson editions that I picked up. And this one is Breakout, which is a mid-70s Charles Bronson movie, and this is the first time this movie's been released on Blu-ray. And I got this from German Amazon for around about 13 euros, brand new, and I thought that was a good deal. And this stars Charles Bronson, Robert Duvall and Jill Ireland. And this is an average Charles Bronson movie. Actually, it's quite comical in this movie because he gets given the job of trying to escape a prisoner out of a prison by using a helicopter. So that's Breakout, the only Blu-ray release of this movie. And the last one I picked up, which is a real special edition, and I only found out about this by chance really, because as I was on the French Amazon site looking for those Dollars trilogy digibooks, I came across this French media book version of the Charles Bronson movie Mr. Majestic, and I bought this for around about 25 euros. And great Charles Bronson movie, one of my top 10 Charles Bronson movies. And this is an 80-page media book, and I think they only made over 6,000 copies of this media book. And I've yet to open this, but what I gather, it contains a DVD and a Blu-ray and the digibook, or media book I should say. But all you Charles Bronson fans out there who do not know about this release, try to pick this one up, because this could become quite rare in the distant future. As Charles Bronson special editions go, there isn't that many. So that's Mr. Majestic, directed by Richard Fleischer. Anyway, I'll just recap on the titles that I picked up in this second lot. That's Mr. Majestic, classic Charles Bronson movie. Breakout, 1970s Charles Bronson movie. The 2 French digibooks that I picked up from France for a few dollars more, and a fistful of dollars. The Zavvi Steelbook of Heat, Expendables 2, Gangster Classic Casino, and the cop thriller, The French Connection. So that's my second lot of titles that I picked up in the month of February. So if anybody has any comments or questions about these 2 steelbooks, these 2 digibooks I should say, from France, or these 2 Charles Bronson editions which have just come out, please post a comment or sub, as I look forward to hearing from you guys. Anyway, the next video that I will be putting out will be a Charles Bronson overview of my collection so far. So until the next video, you guys take care.